Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Master as he travels the Vortex and arrive at episode 522, which will not be a festering pit of self-interest currently ripping itself apart in a fruitless war. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How goes it?
Pretty good. How about you guys?
It goes.
You guys do anything fun this week? Or this
I'm
last 3 weeks? Sorry, what was that again?
Oh, I'm all caught up on Kenobi. Or Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I wish I could say I were. I wish I could say I were.
We wish you could say that too.
Mm-hmm. I have watched the first 2 episodes.
What are your thoughts of the first 2 episodes, Glenn?
I thought the first one was a tad slow, but really, really interesting and a good setup for the season. I think it does a really good job of catching us up and seeing where we're at this point. The second one I think I liked a little bit better, but I think part of that's because there's a lot more action to it. It feels a little more Star Warsy. We get away from Tatooine, and we actually get a little action. I like the little girl that's Leia, despite what some people in the community are saying, and I think she's doing a fantastic job. And
what are some people saying?
There's a lot of people that are complaining that she's not a very good little actress, and I think they're entirely wrong.
No, she's great.
They're entirely wrong. She's great.
Oh, it's those same people that just need to shut up and sit down.
It's probably the same people that are having issues with the third sister.
I haven't seen anything
also great.
I've just seen the official things, basically backhanding all the racist fans that are having a backlash over her.
Oh, I hadn't seen any of that. Well, that's too bad. I like her. I think she's doing a great job.
Yeah. She's a little one-directional right now.
You kind of expect that, though, from that character at this point. I think there's room for growth, but
yeah. It depends on what direction they go with it.
Yeah.
She's very driven.
Yes. What were you saying, Sean?
I saw Anson Mount over on the Strange New Worlds side had a very nice and diplomatic, the Star Trek folks are standing beside her, and it was well put, which I'm sure the Star Wars fans probably didn't appreciate being called out by a Star Trek actor, but if you're going to behave that way, you deserve to be called out.
Some of them deserve that.
They absolutely
certainly deserve it.
I agree with you. I was enjoying it. After the first 2, I don't know that I was enjoying it as much as The Mandalorian, but it was certainly up there because any excuse to get Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan Kenobi was a good thing in my book. And I thought the plot contrivance of this kidnapping, certainly didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I did not see any of that coming either.
Didn't see Flea being involved.
That was cool when he showed up. I mean, he's a bad guy, but he showed up and that. Whoa, I hadn't seen him in a while.
Of course, he's a bad guy. It's Flea.
It was a nifty way to get him off planet. So I thought that was really kind of cool. But no, it's good. And episode 3. Woo! We can't talk about it, but woo! I'll just say that.
Mm-hmm.
What else you watch?
We got out to go see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yay, what'd you think?
It was pretty good. I didn't absolutely love it, but there were parts of it that I really enjoyed. All the multiverse hopping and all the stuff they did with that I thought was really cool. Not sure how I feel about what they did with Wanda, especially in the aftermath of WandaVision. It felt like they hadn't really watched that show before they wrote this or knew how that show was going to end. Because while we had that post-credit scene, all of her motivations didn't feel warranted as they should have, considering the decisions she makes at the end of WandaVision.
Yeah, so I that was my big, and I couldn't talk about that last time we recorded because you hadn't seen it, but that was my biggest complaint with the film is it kind of undermines everything that happened in WandaVision. And so I think what a better they on second viewing, because I saw it twice. On second viewing, it set with me a little better because it is more obvious that it's the Darkhold's influence, and they were springboarding off of that after credit scene from WandaVision. That's why that's placed where it is, and why it's placed in the series at all.
Yeah.
And it is a little more obvious on second viewing that it's very much she's under the control or influence of the Darkhold. But I still think, and I haven't postulated this with you guys, but I still think it would have been a better idea to have her believe that her kids were in danger, and that she was so driven and convinced that she had to go help and rescue them in another universe, that the influence of the Darkhold would have been, I'd have been better with it, because it would have been, I'm doing anything to save my kids rather than I'm going to go kidnap somebody else's kids. So I think if they had framed it that way, they still could have had her make mistakes and go dark and do everything, because she, number one, the Darkhold has convinced her that her kids are, I think it should be a ruse. I think it's not real, that there are kids out there, but she should learn that, recognize that these other kids all have their own Wanda. They all have their own mom. But I think that if they had sold it that way, it might set a little better with me. But overall, that was really my only complaint, is I felt like the Wanda story went another direction than I think it could have. But I loved it. It was a great film. It's a lot of fun. And for everything that you said.
Yeah, and the last act was a little... it almost went a little too far for me. I don't know if it's just... Like, there's always been the magic and the dark aspect in the Marvel movies, but I don't know, it's just... While I applauded them for doing something different, it just didn't quite sit evenly with me, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. I can see that.
Yeah.
I was okay with it. It's Sam Raimi. I didn't expect any less. I mean, it starts out as Spider-Man, and it ends up as Army of Darkness. Evil Dead. Yeah.
I liked it. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but
I think my favorite part of it, other than the Illuminati, all the Illuminati nods, one of my favorite parts of it though was the battle between Sinister Strange and him with the music notes. That was so cool. Original and so inspired. I thought that's if you're gonna do something different, that's what you do right there. I'd never seen anything like that before. It was so cool.
I will take that all day, every day over a random power blast fight,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I really liked America. I thought she was a great character, and I'm glad she's going to stick around.
What did I see? I said, I saw a post that said, "Really, Marvel, you introduced the first Hispanic, or I guess Latino superhero into the MCU, and her power is immigration."
Oof.
I guess if you think of it that way, it's true.
Yeah,
but that's what it was in the comics.
Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, they didn't deviate. But was there anything else? Watch anything else?
No, that's been pretty much it.
We finished up season 4, part 1 of Stranger Things.
How is it?
It's really, really good this season. They've taken a different approach. There's one story thread that I'm hoping that part 2 will do something a little better, because there are some characters that I felt like didn't get really enough this first half of the season. But overall, it's really good. I'm thinking that it's probably going to top last season for my favorite season. 1 and 3 have always been very close for the best season for me, but this one so far, I mean, it depends on where they go with it. But there's a lot of, they've built back on the lore of they're doing a lot of lore building, and I really appreciate that because they're putting things together that we maybe did in a unique way that we didn't quite see was going to be the lead up to this, and they were doing a really fine job with it. So kudos to them.
We started Strange New Worlds. Got the first 2 episodes in.
Is it good so far?
It is extremely good. It's probably the most pure Star Trek since Star Trek.
Oh, wow.
I was not expecting that to be my reaction. I mean, I was excited for the show, but
yeah,
wow, am I excited and up for this show.
Oh, good.
It's done phenomenally well. Anson Mount is killing it as Pike. And pretty much all of my complaints about Discovery and some of the other new Trek have evaporated. There's a couple of things in the pilot that I kind of questioned. Well, is this really prime timeline? Because that doesn't quite match up. And then they won me over by doing this nice, hopeful, beautiful science fiction Star Trek-y show, and I was like, yeah, I don't care anymore. I'm on board with this. So I can't wait to see where they continue to go.
Well, that's cool.
Did you watch Picard season 2?
We still haven't started Picard. It's on the list. It's one that we want to get to. Nah, we haven't done any of it yet. We stalled out on Discovery somewhere in season 3. We're planning on going back to it. We just haven't yet. And I have friends that have watched Picard that kind of keep warning me off of it, saying, I know you won't like this. And I kind of laugh, and it's like, yeah, but it's Star Trek, so of course I'm going to watch it. And they're like, yeah, I know you won't like this. But I refuse to be that pessimistic until I get into it. And I'm still kind of hopeful that it won't be that. But then I read articles, and I'm like, oh, that kind of sounds like what they warned me about.
I don't think you'll like how it ends, which the very ending is what I had issues with, but the rest of it was good leading up to that.
But yeah, it's on the list.
Do you collect Doctor Who? Do you have Doctor Who items and you don't know you collect Doctor Who? For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world, tune in to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, a Direction Point Network podcast. I am Larry Van Rosbergen, your host, and I have been collecting Doctor Who for 40 years. With popular features like collection protection and the most outrageous offer, we have a lot of fun. Available anywhere you get your podcasts. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point Network podcast.
Well, let's move on to we've got more news this week. You can tell there's things happening in the world of Doctor Who since we keep getting news stories that we can react to. So, Keith, you want to tell us what the big news is this time? A couple of pieces.
Yeah. David Tennant and Catherine Tate will be returning in the show's 60th anniversary celebrations, playing the Doctor and Donna.
I'm super excited about that. I think that there's some mixed reaction to that because there's a lot of people that feel like, oh, well, we're going backwards. And there's a lot of people that are like, but the Tennant years were really good, especially with Donna. So we've got that going for them. I think it's a little better news now that we've had the casting announcement. And we know for certain that David Tennant isn't returning as the 14th Doctor, although he may. I mean, he may regenerate into the 14th Doctor, and then Ncuti ends up being the 15th Doctor. I don't know. They may do that, but I'm a little relieved that we're not getting a full season of Tennant, because while I completely enjoyed him as the Doctor, I think that would overshadow what's come before. So
I think it's really cool that they're coming back for the 60th anniversary, and it's great because it's the 60th anniversary.
Yes.
Although I do feel kind of bad for Ncuti because it's going to be, in theory, his first story, and he's going to be overshadowed most likely because David Tennant's back in the role, or that's all anyone's going to pay attention to. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that he balances it well enough that Ncuti gets to really stand out and do his own thing and not be in David Tennant's shadow.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that while I think the 60th will be Shooty's first episode, I think it will be done in such a way that it'll be a Ten and Donna adventure, and we won't wind up seeing Shooty until the end. I think it'll be kind of a quote unquote proper regeneration episode that he'll come in at the end, and that'll set it up for the next season.
Although it does just say they have reunited and are filming scenes that are due to air in 2023 to coincide with the show's 60th anniversary. So maybe they're just coming back for a bunch of short online adventures.
Online adventures?
Yeah, like webcasts.
Oh, maybe.
Night of the Doctor stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It doesn't say they're going to be in the 60th anniversary. It coincides with the 60th anniversary.
Yeah, but maybe. I think web series is a waste. It's a waste of bringing those two characters back if you're just going to do a web series to coincide. I think if it's coincided isn't part of the 60th, it'll be televised. It just won't be the quote unquote won't be the quote unquote 60th. Well, but okay. But Paul McGann had been out of the picture for many years. Paul McGann is not the status of stardom that David Tennant is at this point. He doesn't have the following and fan base. So it was appropriate for that to be a web release because it was a little brief okay, we're going to put a bow on this, deservedly so. This is David Tennant and Catherine Tate. I don't think they're going to waste. I don't want to make it sound like it's a waste, but I don't think they're going to waste that talent by shoving it on some website and saying, "Oh, you can go see this here." I think they're looking at televised. They want eyes in front of screens on the BBC for the 60th year. So while I agree it may not be part of the 60th, I think it'll be still televised. We're not going to see web stuff. Now, that being said, I'm sort of in league with what Sean says. I think they are part of the 60th anniversary, but I think I agree with him that we're going to get Shooty at the end of the 60th, if not sooner. And what makes me say that is because I from the rumblings, it sounds like Jodie regenerates into Shooty. So I think that shoots down the rumors that David Tennant will be the de facto 14th Doctor and then Shooty's the 15th Doctor. Which is a lot of people are saying. I'm not sure that's how that's going to go, but I do subscribe to Sean's theory that there's going to be sort of this side story that goes on and focuses on the nostalgia of it all, and then we focus on Shooty as the future. So that's just my impression. But that said, I'm excited to see David Tennant take on the role. I'm always excited when he records Big Finish stuff. I'm so glad he is because I get really excited when a new Tennant story comes out because he embodies the Doctor so well, and I would be just as excited if Matt Smith or Peter Capaldi returned to the role in audio as well. But I'm so glad that David Tennant's still willing to step in there and do it as frequently as he does.
And I was really excited that it was David Tennant and Catherine Tate. It wasn't David Tennant and Billie Piper are back. It's a better pairing than that.
No comment.
But then
I wasn't going to go there either. Keith and I have differing opinions, but
I'm sure your relief over it not being Billie Piper has nothing to do with your disdain of Rose. Nothing at all.
Nothing to do with it.
Although speaking of Rose, we are getting another Rose.
A Rose by any other name.
Yasmin Finney's joining the cast for a character that's gonna be part of the 60th, it seems, playing the role of Rose, and they're being very cagey. In fact, the quote from Russell T Davies is, "How can there be another Rose?" Well, it's a common name, Russell. That's how it can be another Rose.
You know what's interesting though is that as we're dealing with 60 years of Doctor Who, and whether by accident or design, the Doctor has not picked up too many companions with the same name.
That's true.
I mean, when you think about it, how many how many people in your lives, how many Bobs do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it seems like at this point, with as much traveling as he's done, law of averages would dictate that he's run into another so and so at this point.
Well, he's
And
had two.
even if
He's had two Dorothys.
yeah,
I mean,
I
they
mean,
didn't, neither one of
the
them
Big
went by
Finish
Dorothy,
stuff,
but they both were Dorothys.
even including the Big Finish stuff, I think we've had two Amy's now. But overall, there aren't many of them out there. So I'm
You know,
sorry,
About
Glenn, I
time
cut
that
you off.
started happening.
I have to wonder, and this may just be wild speculation, but I have to wonder if just by Russell T Davies saying that there should be a Doctor Who multiverse, it makes me wonder, because he's always likened the fact that well, at least franchise wise, it should be, spin-offs and things like that. He's always said that, but he's also dropped the words multiverse a couple of times, and I sort of wonder if maybe this might be a way for him to kind of play with that multiversal idea. And if that's the case, maybe this is set in an alternate timeline or an alternate universe, and this Rose is a variant of the Rose that we know. I don't know.
Well, and because multiverses are so popular right now, I could totally
Right.
see that
Right.
happening, cashing in on that popularity. And that could also explain how David Tennant and Catherine Tate are back. That could
Right.
be an alternate universe version of the Doctor and Donna. And Donna hasn't either had her mind wiped or doesn't have to have her mind wiped because they go through different events. So, I mean, if he does the multiverse, it opens up the can of worms to do absolutely anything.
Right. In this parallel universe, perhaps there was never a Dr. Dono event, so there was no need to wipe her brain. It's true. Good point.
Do we want a multiverse in Doctor Who?
We have a multiverse in Doctor
Yeah,
Who.
that was
Pete's
already
World.
that was already established. Well,
He did this already.
Even to a point. I mean, you could count E-Space as multiverse. You could count In Space as multiverse. So
I guess what I'm saying is that any time that it has happened, when you look at, there are a handful of times. We've got Pete's World, we've got Inferno, we've got E-Space, which technically could be considered a pocket universe as something else, and In Space. But you can still count on one hand out of 60 years of Doctor Who the number of times that it's really been an alternate universe, and well, okay, and the Unbound, but it's also primarily, at least within the show proper, it's always kind of been frowned upon. It's always been,
has it?
Yeah,
I don't know if it's been frowned upon.
Well, they've kind of made it
tapped
clear that crossing over into another dimension is dangerous, or that it's wildly unpredictable, or that it shouldn't happen, or that these things are closed off for reasons. That even the web of time that we play with, like it's not a big deal. Oh, we don't do the universe thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's always. I mean, the Doctor had to burn out a star to close down the dimensional gateway over into Pete's World.
Right.
So I mean, it's kind of a big deal, and so to suddenly and Chibnall has now given us this. Oh yeah, we're going to do the thing. So I guess what I'm asking is, do we suddenly want to bridge that gap and say, oh yeah, you can cross universes and it's not a big deal?
If let's first of all, your argument is moot, because there's been a lot that has happened just recently in the last several years that has been rule breaking for Doctor Who. So you can't say anymore that, well, we've always kind of said that this doesn't work. Well, too bad. We also said that there were no previous Doctors in Brain and Morbius, but aha, look what we've done. So I don't think that's off the table at all, and I don't think it would be. I mean, it might be considered pandering because that's what's popular now, but I don't think that's off the table. And the other reason why I say that I'm into it or for it is because if it expands us into new and original and different storytelling and gives us something fresh and new, then I'm all for it. If it ends up being the same stagnant, or in fact, I would rather this be a multiverse version of Ten and Donna, because I don't want it to just be another Ten and Donna story, slipped in. Those are okay sometimes. Those are great for Big Finish, but I don't want to see that necessarily in the series. So I think by shuttling them off and saying, okay, we can do something different. We can be imaginative. We can do what Big Finish did with Unbound, where we all of, there's so many possibilities available now because we haven't constrained ourselves to the timeline. And I think that works. If it works, if they can make it work, then I'm all for it.
Didn't Tetuan, or whatever her name was, in Flux when she was talking about, bridging over to the new universe?
She was already in a different universe, yeah. Or she was between universes.
She was between the universes, but didn't she talk about that one being kind of like a multiverse? Like it was a duplicate universe that had all the same people in it? Yeah,
I think they talked about the theory of parallel universes, and that the two that she was sandwiched between was, basically an alternate universe.
So Chibnall's already laid the groundwork for us. That's what's going to happen, Sean. I don't think we're going to get a zombie doctor, so I think it'll be all right.
Let's hope not. That's one of the only multiverse things that I don't care for so much for.
Yeah.
I didn't mind the Doctor Strange. I didn't mind that one, but Defender Strange became a zombie thing. That was okay. I was fine with that because there was a reason for that. But the zombies episode of
the What If.
Yeah, What If? They did that because the comic series was so popular.
Well, you knew they were going to do that.
Of course they were. They gave themselves license to do anything, is what they did.
The ending of that episode was wow. For being the okay, here's the zombie episode. We had to do the zombie episode. I'll suffer through the zombie, and then it went where it went at the end, and it got dark, and it was like, oh, okay, didn't see that coming. But I digress. Anyway.
They almost all went dark at the end for the most part, but that one did go exceptionally dark.
That's true. What If was a little, it was not a happy ray of sunshine.
No, not really at all.
Was not.
I'll be interested to see what they do with it, and I'm excited for the announcements that have come so far. We can go with the old standard. What was it? What was the fifth Doctor story? Axis of Insanity, the one where they established that there's a place where all of the
aborted
timelines end up, kind of like, sort of like Loki, the end of Loki with the Nexus. Anyway, I'm excited. We'll see what's going on.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Witt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
All right, well, let's move on to our reviews.
Beneath the Viscoid. On the ocean planet Gardeza, deep beneath the Viscoid, a mysterious capsule is recovered from the Time War. An equally mysterious stranger found within. The Doctor's reputation precedes him, even here. But can he be trusted?
Let me...
Yeah, okay, you go ahead.
I was to say, let me just say, I'm of two minds of this, and it's because of the way that we've done this. If this had been as the first War Master story, this is a good story, and it's a good setup to bring him back. It's neat that they have discarded that his capsule is discarded at the bottom of this ocean world. They're going to use this. They've discovered it, and they're going to use the energy as a weapon against the Daleks that are attacking. Him pretending to be the Doctor. All of that is great, and it's great storytelling. The problem that it's not even a problem. One of the things that has going against it for the way we've done it is we've had much better stories now because Jacoby's gotten his footing. The writers have kind of found the balance, striking the balance between malice and intrigue as far as the War Master goes. And so they've done a really good job that this seems like a more saccharine War Doctor, even though he's still up to his mischievous deeds and misdirection and fooling people and to his own benefit. But just from where we've been and what we've heard, it kind of knocks it down a level. But I thought overall it was a good story. It was an interesting story. I'm hoping that in the overall arc, when we finished the box set of these, because this is only the first one in the box set of 4 for Only the Good that we've done, and the reason we did that obviously is because of the placement of the timeline we're using. When we get into that more, I think maybe if they do connect, although I don't feel like they're going to necessarily connect so much in this first box set, it really feels like maybe they're all going to be standalone stories. But maybe that will, maybe I'll be a little more impressed by this story once we've heard those other 3 stories. But I understand why we did this, and it does, and I wondered how it would, but it does make sense so far as to where this timeline placed it, and as to why we now jump back over to the second half of the first Time War box set because of the way that this sort of ends. So again, I enjoyed this story. I thought the concepts in it were good. I sort of felt that I wish I could remember the race of people that were being overrun by the Daleks, and the idea of using this device that they've found with this power that she's trying to figure out what it is. They're gonna ram it up the Dalek's pipe hole and blow them up. I thought
I wondered where you were going with that.
it was an inspired concept, and I thought it was cool. But like I say, it just gets knocked back a little bit based on the fact that we've heard some other stories that I felt were much better.
What I liked about the story was the connective threads to it.
Yeah.
The fact of how much it ties into the last box set we listened to of where it left the War Master, which is, considering this is the first one that came, I don't believe that they had written that or had a full plan. I think they just thought, okay, this will be cool, and then retroactively wrote the other box set, which elevates that one a little bit for me in the fact that they were able to sync that up so well.
Yeah.
And then getting it to line up with where we go in Gallifrey, I really appreciated that and thought that was good. The rest of it is just kind of a standard War Master story of, okay, he's plotting, he's scheming, he's using these people to get his TARDIS back. Okay, that's the end game, and he's going to do what it takes to do it, and that's fine.
Honestly, I think I have the opposite reaction. I thought the story itself was fine. I enjoyed the War Master being the War Master and masquerading as the Doctor, and it kind of gave us yet another in that possible. Well, this is what happened while this is why the computer was trying to kill the 8th Doctor in that one episode, because of all these horrible things that he's been reported to have done. But the timey-wimey nature of the story, even knowing that this would have been the first one to have come out in the set, and how it's structured, that we're kind of dropped into the middle of the story, and it's kind of in the middle of 2 stories in a way, because you're dropped into the middle of this story, which is coming on the heels of a previous story that fit into the middle of another story. You know what I mean? And so I don't think that was, oh yeah, we're just going to write around that. I feel like they definitely had to have had a plan, at least an outline at work, for how the timey-wimey nature of it was going to go. But I don't know that it was necessary. Sometimes I think Big Finish does these kind of things because they can, and sometimes I think they're a little too clever about it. And there's something to be said for a straightforward narrative, even within a time travel environment. And certainly, Stephen Moffat never met a time paradox he didn't like, but he did it well. And this one just kind of feels like it was done out of order for the sake of doing it out of order, which this timeline attempts to rectify. But by putting it where it does, in a way, I feel, as Glenn said, it kind of robs some of the agency of the fact that, well, we've heard better stories previously, at least performance-wise. So the story itself wasn't bad, but knowing that you're listening to some parts, but which have, are literally repeated, it's like, oh yeah, I see where you're going with this, and I felt like that kind of detracted from this one because it was now being shoehorned in to make sense of where the placement of it would go. But the story itself of the fish people being, abused by the Daleks, and then the Master taking advantage of that and pushing even further, I thought that part was fine. I enjoyed that part of it. Surprisingly, the end of it, when he offs the one survivor, I kind of grimaced a little bit at the cold-blooded nature of it, and I don't know why, because it's the Master. He's fully capable of being the psychotic murderer.
He's done it before, and he's done it before in the box sets we've already reviewed.
Yeah,
I would be more surprised if he didn't.
Right,
he's done it before. He will do it again. But for whatever reason, it struck me as like, that was horrible, and I don't know why.
Well, that was the only thing that felt comfortably familiar with this War Doctor that I have was the fact that the end is so sinister.
I think part of that is why he's not as sinister as the means to an end, and the fact that he is pretending to be the Doctor again.
Sure. I think I would have to disagree, Sean. I don't think that they went into this knowing how they were going to write around it. I think they went into this with a story, because I agree that I agree with Keith that it feels like it connects well coming out of the box set we just listened to. I disagree with you that it feels like it's shoehorned in here, because I don't think it does. I think somebody sat down and wrote a story, and they had all these parts and pieces, and they said, well, we'll tell this story, and then if this goes well, we'll come back and wrap around it. And I think that's probably where they went with it. But I feel like this story, had we listened to it first, I don't feel like I would have felt like we were necessarily dropped in the middle of the story, because we are very, very familiar just from the TV series that the Time War happened, that the Daleks were involved, that the Master at some point was involved because of where he ends up at the end of the universe. He ran from the war, the Time War. So we know all of that. We could formulate in our minds enough from the evidence we know of to make this this is where the Master's been during this, and this is how he gets plucked out and ends up getting drawn into the war. And so I thought that if we'd listened to this first, that would have made sense in that way. I think they did. I think the reason maybe it feels shoehorned is because maybe it connects too well, because they knew what they had to write to, rather than writing something and then continuing on a story. They said, okay, well, we have to now get from point A to point B because we've already written point B. And so maybe that's why it feels shoehorned, because maybe there was too much connectivity. Maybe they forced it a little bit. I don't feel that way, but maybe you sense that or see that. But I disagree that this was orchestrated. I think they sat down and they said, look, somebody come up with a good War Master story. This is what they had. It was popular. People loved it. And they said, and Jacoby wanted to come back. So they said, well, let's build on this. And they built both directions on it.
And that's,
that's definitely the case, I think, because the Gallifrey, at least this box set was recorded in April 2017, and the Gallifrey that it ties to, It looks like it was released in 2018. So even that direction, just going into Gallifrey, they obviously wrote the War Master story and then said, okay, well, let's tie it in after the fact.
Yeah, and I think that's why these two will feel like they are written sequentially. Well, let's move on to the next. Or did anybody else have anything on that one to conclude? I think we all kind of agreed it was a pretty good story. Let's move on to the next story, which is the second half of Gallifrey Time War.
The devil you know. The Time War has begun in earnest, and Romana must think the unthinkable. For a most dangerous mission, she selects the most dangerous warrior, the Master. But he will not be alone. Leela accompanies her old enemy as they begin an unusual interrogation. What does Finian Valentine know? And can Leela and the Master ever truly be on the same side?
Sean, you don't like this one because Leela was dispatched. That's why you won't get a bum. Because we don't know what happened to Leela.
You know,
but I do.
You know what's interesting is the story of this one was kind of meh. I could take it or leave it. I didn't find the fracturing of this individual into two identical parts that had different timelines was kind of a cool idea, but then I didn't feel like it went anywhere or that they did anything inventive with it. We were just going to interrogate them as two different individuals, and then the Master's going to kill one of them anyway. So it just kind of became, well, then why bother doing it if we're not going to, if it's not essential to the plot, if it doesn't wind up having a cool MacGuffin, or then why bother? So that part of it all was kind of there. The Master and Leela stuff was great.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the two of them kind of playing off of each other, and Leela psychoanalyzing him, and you know, I met your previous Husk. You're not like him, and all of that was wonderful. The ending very much, again, I don't know why, took me by surprise. And I was, I should have seen it coming. And then I was quite shocked that he, hucked her out into the vortex. And that was very, I don't want to say off-putting. It was exciting and thrilling. And yes, I'm concerned and worried. And then we got another episode to kind of suffer through. And it's like, well, no, why is nobody talking about where Leela went? Why are we dealing with politics as usual on Gallifrey? Leela is missing, people. Call out the Chancellery Guard. We have to search for her. But I assume she'll show up again at some point in time because, she's Leela. It's not like... It's not like a salamander,
I'll go next because I almost agree with every point you've made. And in fact, I could almost mirror everything you said. The one thing I would interject, though, was while I thought that the story was kind of mundane and run-of-the-mill, I thought it was interesting to have a device that basically splintered somebody's timeline. It's been done before where we have two entities from the same timeline sharing, but I kind of thought that was a neat concept and able to give us, both sides of the coin, with Leela being the good and the Master being the bad. I think that made that work, and I think that's why their interactions work so well, is because we're able to pull each other away and then confer in between while those things are going. But everything else I agree with, and I was completely caught off guard. And Keith may be able to foreshadow a little bit, and hopefully maybe he doesn't. But what this felt like to me, though, all in all, was it feels like they're moving players off of the board while they set up the meat and center of the Time War, because we just dispatched of Ace in the last story, who's been at least a running character prior to this. We've now dispatched Leela in this story, who has been a prior character, running in the Gallifrey series. So it when that happened on the heels of, now it has been months since we listened to it, but on the heels in release order of them doing the same to Ace, I sort of felt like they're moving the players off the board, because I think it's almost like these are sacred characters that we really need to move away from the conflict that's going to happen. And I sort of feel like, I'll talk about it when we get to the next one. But that's how it's at least felt to me, and that may not be the case, but that's what it felt like.
Yeah, I would agree. The story itself was it was fine. It wasn't great. What was great about it was the interactions between the Master and Leela. And at the end of the story, it did feel like what you said, Glenn. It felt like them moving pieces to get not only Ace and Leela gone, but to kind of isolate Romana from, so what they could do with future stories that they want to do, where she doesn't have any, not necessarily baggage, but no allies to help her go through these challenges. And it also felt like I could have sworn at some point somebody asked Russell T Davies, well, what about Leela and Romana during the Time War, or Leela and Ace during the Time War, or something along those lines, and he made some mention of, well, they're not on Gallifrey. So it felt like Big Finish took it upon themselves to go, okay, well, let's get them off Gallifrey since we're doing Time War stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. I knew that he said that Romana was not president at the time of the Time War, but I did not know that about the other two, so that makes sense.
I could be misremembering it. I could be thinking of the Romana quote, but it feels like and it feels logical, especially with the first story they did with the refugees and where they took those characters, what they did with that, and wound up kicking them out also.
Yeah.
It makes sense that they would tighten their borders and keep non-Gallifreyans off of Gallifrey during the Time War.
Sure.
Well, so it all makes sense, but it's still a gut punch because we love these characters so much.
Yeah. As you said, Glenn, knowing, going from point A to point B, knowing that these characters are on Gallifrey and part of the proceedings at this point in the timeline, and then getting to the end of the Time War and knowing that Gallifrey is either A, going to be destroyed, or B, locked into a status bubble and thrown into another universe somewhere, these characters are going to wind up dead.
Yeah.
So we either have to kill them, in the Time War, which nobody really wants to see happen, or we have to get them out of harm's way in some way, shape, or form. Right. And so this is kind of a convenient way to do that, is even if it leaves their fate up in the air at this point, at least we can come back to it. So
they've been different peril to keep them out of the other peril.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't we have just a little bit more peril?
Of course, I saw the cover of, I won't ruin it for anybody, but I saw the cover of Big Finish is one of their most recent releases that's coming out. And so I do know that we're not done with Leela yet.
Yay!
Yeah, I wasn't going to tip my hand, but I couldn't remember how far you got in a certain range either. So.
Okay. Yeah, not there yet.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, not there.
You guys are so cute.
I know Sean has not listened to it. So
Keith especially is taking great pleasure in this. Don't think I don't know that. After years of the podcast of hearing about Trocken, I know that you are all over this right now. You don't know what's coming in Big Finish, do you?
Well, let's move on to the next one, because
that means that there is some adventures between what I know and this that I was not aware of.
Sure. Well, let's move on to the next one, because there was another element to this that sort of makes me that emboldens my theory. So go ahead.
Desperate measures. The Dalek Emperor attacks a vital Time Lord outpost. Victory would be a devastating blow to Gallifrey. Romana is caught up in the machinations of a president who sees control slipping away. Is it time to bargain with the War Council, or perhaps to parley with even more dangerous parties? The Time War has barely begun, and for Gallifrey, desperate times are already here.
Bum, bum, bum.
No.
No.
No, and it's just because
No.
yes, because
The ending is a bum bum bum. The rest of it
yes,
is kind of,
I will 100% give you that. If I could just give the ending a bum bum bum, I agree. The problem is that we should let Keith go first because we haven't let him go for so many of these yet. But the problem with this is we have now, and Sean, you said it earlier, we've devolved back into politics on Gallifrey. And I know that there are people that like that more than I do. It's just not my thing. I feel like there's so much of this like espionage and backroom things and, political machinations. And there's too much of that. I just don't care about that. And it also, again, emboldened my theory that they were moving players off the board because we know that Leela's not president, and I thought they had rectified that by putting her in charge of the CIA. And we know that Rassilon comes back to power. That's not a surprise. The way they get there, I thought was cool, and I will give this story that much credit. But everything leading up to that, it was a yawn fest. It was almost, I know what's going to happen here. Romana is not going to win this. It is going to be this crazy war guy that's going to win this thing, or this election, that he's going to be president because he's the Donald Trump of everything. He's the people's president. He's the one that's in the trenches, the everyday man. And so I got bored with this story because I thought, okay, just get to the end. I want to know what all this setup is about. And the setup, again, the payoff from the setup is really cool, but just getting there, I was just bored to tears.
What's frustrating about it is we've gone through all of these War Master stories where there's the war, or at least a tertiary part of it. And there's the war, but we don't do any part of it. There's some big battle that's going on, and we see none of the action. We just hear reports about it. And so after all of these actual adventures, to hear the politics and the talking about the war is dull and boring.
Yeah.
And then there's the political maneuverings that if you're not paying super close attention, you kind of miss, and it feels like they jump all over the place also. So it feels a little uneven and inconsistent in what they're doing, all just to get to Rassilon's return, which how they did it was very cool and very clever, but it was getting there was the frustration.
And I'm not advocating for making this story any longer, but there is time jumps that really sort of make it feel rushed, and I think that's what makes it feel disconnected at times.
Yeah, that could be.
Maybe I just like the political maneuvering more than you guys do, but I think you're crazy.
Well, I think you do. You've expressed that in other stories that we reviewed, certainly.
I can see where you're coming from with the time jumps, because yes, that did make it feel a little chaotic. But it's wartime, and I don't think that's any more or less chaotic than other stories where we're dropped in the middle of things and kind of expected to keep up. With this one, I thought the pacing of the political maneuvering, I thought it was moving I thought it moved well. I thought it set up the dangers of what were happening and the factions within the Gallifreyan government and the frustrations certainly that Romana was feeling, that we have so much bigger fish to fry, and yet these people are playing these petty little political games, and why can't they see the bigger picture? And then the kind of immediate bombshell that's dropped, that Libya wants to get out, that she feels she's not cut out for this, and I want to escape with my reputation intact. How do I do it? And Narvin and Leela, Romana kind of go, oh, all right, well here's we do it this way, and they think they've got this victory. and it doesn't wind up going that way, which admittedly they probably should have foreseen that it was yet another trap, but I was like, oh, okay, cool. So we go through this sham election, and I'll be honest, up until the end of it, I still wasn't quite sure where in the timeline it was set, because I think this is I could be wrong if maybe I'm misremembering, but I think this was the first one where they kind of finally referenced the fact that she was a former president.
No, the first story in this box set, they talked about it.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, because she was talking about, well, during your reign, you're not president anymore. When the new gal is.
That's right.
Yeah, they had the whole conversation.
Because I still get confused as to where Romana's at in her thing with, did she do the CIA thing before she was president or after? So this helped solidify that for me, but I'm old. So the fact that she was rerunning and willing to re-regenerate, and it was like, well, okay, obviously this isn't going to work because we know that Lala the Word's not going anywhere, at least not yet. So what's the catch? And then to get to that moment, and I thought it was very clever to set up the idea of this, resurrection engine that we've started pulling these dead Time Lords out of Hawk and putting them back into the fight, but we're doing it on the hush hush. And we know, according to the TV show, this is one of I think this is probably what I appreciated about it the most, is that the TV show gave us Rassilon back, which we all agree is such a monumentally cool whoa. And yet, in typical TV show fashion, we're not even remotely going to explain how it worked. The Master coming back, we kind of write off as, well, he always comes back. So, the fact that we've seen him die multiple times, and then he shows up again a couple seasons later, we just kind of write it off anymore. We don't expect an answer to that one. But Rassilon, that's kind of a big deal. We've met the dude's ghost. And so bringing him back into a flesh and blood body, but then not to talk about it, kind of was even for Doctor Who terms, it was like I wonder how they did it. And so to go through and give us this story where we get all of this setup to get to this moment where it was like, this is how we're going to do it. I enjoyed that. For me, that was, maybe it was all, fan waving. I didn't care. It was worth the setup to get to that moment for me to go, aha, and have that. What a clever bit of, we're going to put the crown on you and then channel all this through the Matrix to do the thing. I loved the bit where we recognize the key of Rassilon is still missing. Leading back to Tom Baker's coronation. But just to get to that moment, and this is how we're bringing Rassilon back. And all of that was this great crescendo of, this build up to that moment, and immediate disappointment that it wasn't Timothy Dalton. Which makes sense. I mean, I get it. He's probably going to be there for a while and have a couple of rejections, but still, how cool would that have been? But
I wasn't surprised by it not being him, because that would have been a big announcement. Big Finish that would have been something they'd have said, and they've never announced Timothy Dalton returning as Rassilon or even doing anything with Big Finish. So I knew by the end of this that there was no way that they were going to pull a surprise, because they would not be able to ever get a big name like that and not go, hey, look who we got. So I mean, even with Eric Roberts, I mean, he's not even on the same tier as Timothy Dalton, and they announced him returning to the role of the Master. So, which would have been equally,
hope of being surprised.
Well, which would have been equally as cool if they'd have just, stepped out and, oh wait, is that Eric Roberts? Things like that would be cool from the perspective of the story, but also from the perspective of capitalism and sales. They want people to come running when they make these announcements, and so that's why they do it. So I wasn't surprised at all.
Plus later they announced Richard Armitage that comes in and does
Right, because
Rassilon
in fact that's
future story, so they get a
that's
big name
right,
eventually, and they announce that far in advance.
right. So and that's who's I think still currently as they're releasing is playing Rassilon in the series. So
And I can't wait to get to his stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
But no, like I said, for me, it was, yes, it was totally fan fiction. It was somebody sitting down going, how do we get from point A to point B? Give me a rationale to do it, and then go write a story on it. And we went, okay. And then they did. And I was like, yep, I'm here for this. I thoroughly enjoyed that aspect of it. And the fact that they went there and that they pulled it off and they gave me the pathway to get, I was like, you know what? This could have been a crappy story, and I still would have been okay with this. I'd have been extremely happy with the fact that we got this moment. The fact that it had the political intrigue and everything that led up to it, that's icing on the cake, man. That was cool. So maybe 10 years from now, I'll go back and re-listen to it and say, you know what, guys, you were right. It wasn't very good. For right now, I'm riding high. I thought it was cool.
I think the other thing that the lineage thing, having the certain guy hooking him up, that the Matrix, the Crown thing, that was all cool. Although the Resurrection Engine was not a surprise to me. And even though the television series didn't tell us about the Resurrection Engine, we knew, at least from, well, I can't remember if you did it. Keith and I read it and reviewed it while you were gone on vacation one time. But we did Engines of War, which addresses the Resurrection Engine as well. In fact, it's being used in a different way in order to. I don't want to spoil anything. If
that's the man, that's the Man novel, right?
Yes. Yeah.
No, I've read that.
You did, okay. So he's using it.
I caught
up
on that.
He's got Barusa in a recycle loop, basically, in order to power the thing. So we knew that existed prior, and we knew that is what was used in order to bring, previous Time Lords and then Rassilon ultimately. We just didn't know how it came about, which is what this kind of fills in the gap in the stories there for us. So.
Well, as soon as they started talking about the Resurrection Engine, I said I knew that, that's where this is heading. We're bringing Rassilon back.
Yeah, I sort of suspected. I didn't know that how they were going to do it. I didn't know it was going to be as cool as how they did it. But I felt they were either on the path. I wasn't sure it would be the cliffhanger of this one, or if it would be in the next box set where he shows up. But it's a little bit of both.
Yep.
Well, and the other thing that I guess, and maybe this is a weird mental state to be in, I guess, but because obviously we've always said canon is kind of what you make of it. Mm-hmm. In my mind, there are tiers of canon when it comes to Doctor Who. There's the television series is kind of the final word on the matter of canon, and then slightly below it, but still canon in my mind, is Big Finish. Mm. And then below that would be novels and comics and other assorted media, where it's like, these are canon if you can make them fit, but they don't necessarily hold the same weight as an audio story. I don't know why my brain categorizes things in that manner, but it does. It's like, well, if there's an actor involved, then it has more oomph to it.
I would sort of agree, except for I think I would put BBC sanctioned books between official and Big Finish, or the television and official books and Big Finish. But then I think novels go back into a tier below that, because then you've got licensed novels like Virgin, Penguin, those kind of things. So I guess Penguin is still even BBC Books sanctioned stuff. But I would agree with you, Sean. There are levels of, and at the very bottom is certainly TV comedy. Action comedy.
yes.
But they're still part of the canon. So
and maybe that's just the years and years and years of reading the Star Trek novels that did that to me. But it just, it fits in with that mindset. So reading it in the book and going, the Resurrection Engine, but then hearing it that's different. That carries more weight. I don't know why, just does. So now I do have a question. So the what was the name of this occlusion that they were in? This the kyphos occlusion. This was not the same thing that Braxitel went off to defend.
No.
It was a different occlusion, a different nebula sector of galaxy space that the Daleks were invading, right?
Yes, that was my impression.
Okay. I wondered maybe if it was meant to be part of the reason that he went there to attempt to defend it. And then I was like, oh, well, that would be kind of cool if it was part of the, the reason that they were able to destroy the thing and blow up the Dalek ships is because he was there, but it didn't quite fit. But yeah, never mind.
It was nice that he showed up to save Narvin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another reason this one rocks? Valerian wants to start using bow ships.
Yeah, pull the bow ships back into service.
that right there, 5 stars, man.
What are you going to do, stab the Daleks with them?
Dude. I guarantee you launch a bolt that big, that hard, that fast in a Dalek casing, the Dalekanium's not going to stop it. I would pay to see that.
Anything else on this one before we start to finish up our show? All right. Well, Sean, what do we got coming up?
I wish I had better reasons for liking it. I feel very inadequate trying to defend the story, other than just I feel like Marge. I just think they're neat.
That's all right. Sometimes it's okay just to think they're neat.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to fall down on this one.
What do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up on the schedule, more Gallifrey. A Time War 2 box set, all 4 stories. So continuing on with Lord Rassilon, President Eternal, and how he's going to muck things up, as he surely will. Followed by some more War Master with Killing Time, which I believe is the War Master 6. And then we're going to jump all the way back to the War Master 1 and finish off with 2, 3, and 4, the last 3 stories of the first box set of the War Master, only the good. And that will end Act 1 of the Time War, which really seems a long time coming.
It's a big act.
It's a big act.
It is a big act, yeah.
It's the biggest act, if I'm not mistaken.
The next 2 are smaller, but as they keep releasing stuff, I keep shoving things into our timeline here. So we'll see how it pans out. The longer it takes us to do this, the more materials are going to get shoved in here. So
true.
All right.
That is what is on deck.
We'll
keep by true believers.
Yeah, that's right. Keep track of what's going on our website, travelingthevortex.com. There you can download episodes of the show and also keep up with what we are reviewing. And if you get any value out of this podcast, why not put some back into it? You can do that by clicking on the Patreon link on our website. Consider supporting us. Thank you to those who already are. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to this podcast, and make sure to join in the conversation in our listeners forum on Facebook. Anything else before we close this show? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.